Good afternoon. So I keep seeing the same or similar questions regarding jibing, or maybe they're more like complaints about how hard a jibe is. And so in this video, I'm going to do my best to address the tips and causes and address what we can do. So I'm going to talk about gear, how that can affect jibes. I'm going to talk about the move itself and break it down on how we can address some of these issues. And we can see from these advanced jibes, the guys that have been doing it for a long time and on the advanced gear, they don't even do regular jibes. So watching them isn't all that helpful because a beginner isn't going to be on this gear and they can't do a jibe like this. But I am showing it just to see the contrast. And even when we get to someone who does do a normal jibe, they're on a fast foil, they're moving really fast, they have perfect boom control. So again, not super helpful to watch them as a beginner because we're not going to be able to emulate this. And we get more to the intermediate level still, on a faster foil, but just a basic jibe, go around, do it. You can tell by watching these folks that they're going to get the jibe every time. They don't struggle. They're not super beginner flailing, and you can tell they're going to make it. So they've got beyond the basic. And then we get more into the basic jibe. Lots of awkward looking movements, struggle, like mostly touchdown, lucky if they make it through, or even someone that knows how to foil but new to winging, like lots of awkward movements and just a struggle to put it all together. Again, same situation, touchdown, whether it's the lean part that's the hard or the altitude, or get some of that going and then, now I have to add in the handles, and by that point lost altitude. So one of the reasons jibing is so hard because it's actually three moves. It's the turn, which is a lean, it's the wing handling, and then it's riding toe side. And if we break that down further, the lean, obvious, that's the start of the turn. Regardless of skill level or gear, the lean is the first part of the turn, super obvious. Another element of the turn is altitude control. Even in flat water, altitude control. We see lots of knee movement, hip movement, maintaining altitude control to have a level flight, both keep the board from touching down, but also to keep the foil from coming out of the water. Even on a beginner setup, you see knee movement, hip movement, the altitude is changing. This is a person that knows how to foil, so they know the moves, they're just putting it all together. And I have a full tutorial on my website going into detail on hip movement and another one on turns. For this video, I'm just going over the basic components of the jibe and where people get stuck and why it's hard. So without proper altitude management, the obvious problem we come into is too low, digging the nose in. This particular day, there's both cross up from kiteboarders and some refraction off this like mud sandbar, creating this cross wave. And so coming through the jibe, come around, and there's this secondary wave that I hit. The other necessity for altitude control is keeping the wingtip in the water. If we're on a short mast, which I am, or we're too high on even a longer mast, and whether the foil's too wide or whatever, tip comes out. Now I'm expecting it. I know it's close. And so you see, it doesn't ventilate. I'm able to recover and use the wing to pull me through. But most beginners, almost 100% of the time, if a beginner does this, they're going to crash and go down and not ride it out. Another reason for altitude control is if we're out in some chop, we need to be able to navigate the board height as we're going into the jibe. And if we don't have that down when we hit these up and down troughs and peaks, we're going to crash. And also the component of matching altitude is when we're using some swell to navigate through the jibe, if we can't control the board height and nose direction, then trying to jibe by using the swell, we're going to crash. So here, being able to have that skill can ride it out and complete the jibe. See, this is a familiar story with beginners. Start high and struggle to manage altitude while doing wing handling, end up coming down, touching down, which either scrubs speed and often is a deal breaker, and we don't ride it out. And that here he pulls it. Again, the same story. Come in high, looks good, and yet coming through the jibe, trying to manage the hand part and coming through the turn, putting it all together, and the inevitable touchdown. It's just complicated when we try to put it all together. Here, even with the lower altitude, but we're riding a little swell and it looks good, even gaining altitude, but yet trying to put it all together, struggling, going straight instead of doing the turn because trying to add in the wing handling. And once we let go and depower, immediately bury the nose, don't have enough. And even in flat water with somebody that knows how to foil, knows what to do turn-wise, just dealing with the handwork, looking up, trying to find the handle. By the time get it, lose altitude, touchdown, and essentially, end up pulling ourselves around through the turn. So what do we do? Well, we essentially do what Ken's doing here. Work it one at a time. Just glide through the turn, forget about the wing, and practice that part. That's one drill we can do. Essentially, just imagine he doesn't have the wing or it can magically disappear. Let go of the backhand, and it's all just focus on the turn. That's one way to break it down. Just do the turn part. Focus on altitude, keeping a nice level, even bring it in and do a nice touchdown, flat and level. That's one drill we can do. The second part, the wing handling, well, we can do that on the beach all day. I mean, here Kenny's doing it on the water, but essentially play with the wing, practice the jibe, be able to do it eyes closed, and we can do it kneeling, sitting, standing on the water, find some flat water, and just do the jibe. Repeat the handwork over and over and over again. How many times can you do it in 15 minutes on the beach? 100, 200, 500? I mean, Avery's an old school windsurfer. He's probably got 20, 30 years experience with the boom. That's why he makes it look so easy. And so in order to condense 20 or 30 years of no-look handling, we need to do it on the beach. If we try to go out in the water every time we fall, what do we get? One in a 5-minute or one in a 1-minute interval, or, in an hour, maybe we do it 30 times. If we do it on the beach, we can do it hundreds of times. And then same with toe side. We can slog toe side in flat water. We can practice being crossed up either on our knees or sitting down. If we look at this motion I'm doing with my hands, just feeling the wind pumping, we can stand on the beach, practice holding up our weight, just standing on the sand, crossed up like this. See if we can find the wind, get our balance. Just, do that 5 minutes. You can learn so much just by doing that simple drill. If we wait until we actually complete the 2 parts of the jive, we're super stoked to come around, and then we come to toe side. It's super hard to try to figure out on the fly. I already knew how to foil when the wing came along, and this is the part that confused me the most or had me the most crossed up. I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't know I could go and practice this and figure out. I didn't know what the wing could or couldn't do, and now I do, so that's why I'm telling you guys. So gear. On one end, we've got what Johnny and Kenny are riding, tiny Mike's Lab, super fast, small boards, advanced wings, advanced moves. That's the one extreme. Very unbeginner friendly. Yes, tons of glide, carries through the water, makes it easy to complete a jive and, no wind, no swell. Once you just get some speed up and lean into it, they're coming around no matter what. And then just add the wing handling in. The opposite end of this spectrum is big, slow, 2,500, giant, big span, big everything, and short mast. I think this is a 68, ridiculously short, so hard to do jives on this. I haven't tried in rough water before like this, and it was so hard. These are probably the hardest jives I've ever done. So what's the happy medium? What would I change about this setup? I would recommend this for a beginner, but instead of a 68 mast, go 76 or 85. Longer than 85, and that's asking for trouble with the beginner, unless you have phenomenal balance and you're just naturally comfortable on the foil. But if you're at that point, you probably don't need this tutorial. So the reason this is so beginner friendly is it's slow. It's not reactive. It's not removable. It slows everything down and prevents the nastiest part of a foiling injury, which is the roll fall. When a beginner gets on one of these really fast, reactive, responsive foils, they get out of control so quick before they even know what's happening. And then they're, bam, down super hard and add a tall mast in the mix. And it's even sketchier fall. And that's where I see most of the injuries is on a roll fall, going too advanced, too quick. So if we want to understand or get a look at why I try to steer people away from advanced foils, these guys already know how to foil. They're practicing on their weak side, doing turns and jibes on, let's say, their regular foot, and here they are, goofy foot. And you see how quickly it is for a little gust of wind or just the awkwardness of not knowing how to do it on our opposite side. It can get gnarly super quick. If we watch it again, it seems all good, but then as soon as the wing gets a little away from us and the spot's really gusty, and then look up, and then, okay, now start to get off balance. And then as soon as you get a little power, it's like yank. And, had this person been a beginner, they couldn't do that foot adjust. They wouldn't be able to correct and do all this stuff without getting hurt. Same thing here. This is slow motion, but this is a fast foil coming in hot. Everything looks good. Seems to be fine, but then just a little altitude jump and a little balance off, and then swinging arms around and trying to correct, and makes it. And yet, beginners doing stuff like this, it gets sketchy quick. And it is the trade-off on this, back on the big, slow, short mast. Like, just this mast is so short, I have to do these yanking jibes and tip out. And in a way, it's a trade-off, catch-22. The bigger, slower, clunkier foil with the shorter mast forces better technique. And so what is the ideal thing for learning? I mean, part of it is just comfort level. Like, what maneuvers, like what risk are you willing to take on? And sometimes it's trial and error. Like, one way to do it is get an advanced foil, go out and just go straight. Keep the mast short at first, just to see if you can handle it. And if you do have a sketchy breach, at least you're on a short mast. You're not going to have that super high altitude, gnarly wipeout. And then practice. One of the biggest things we can do is come to a place like this, flat water, only beginners or only people working on stuff, as in we're all here for the same reason. The only reason people want to come here is to work on stuff or to try something new. And so it's a good thing. We take out all the chop. One of the keys, or one of the most likely causes of a roll fall, is if you have big differences in swell height. If you have a big roller and then a steep trough, trying to navigate that through a turn leads to a roll fall. Whereas it's flat and predictable, that takes that part out of the equation. And as far as repetition, if we do come in and touch down in flat water, it's way, way, way more likely to recover and be able to keep going without, whereas in the chop, this is pretty big swell day, and every touchdown often leads to a fall, and you go in and then you got to get back on your board, and then starting again in rough water adds to the complexity. So often going to flat water, especially for me, when I wanted to learn a move, it was 1,000 times easier, and everyone had the same consensus, or I heard from people this feedback over and over again. It was like, wow, I'm so glad I found this place. I come back here again anytime I try a new move. Like, even advanced riders, anytime they want to work on tacks or something like that, they still come back here. Why? Because it just makes it easy. It's a good way to get a lot of repetition in by removing all the things that might become obstacles to learning a new move. It's like the training wheels or the training ground or the practice course. It's perfect. And a skill that really helps is developing the sensitivity for altitude awareness, or where the tips are in relation to breaching. And this foil is new to me, so I don't know. I'm playing around. I'm feeling it out. I'm going up a little, coming down. I'm keeping power in the wing so that if it does come out, I don't have a hard crash. I can support my weight, but I'm just feeling it out. In other words, we do all this before we attempt to jibe. I'm stoked to announce I have these Stoked shirts, the Stoked foil shirt, got the Wind Lifts all wing shirt, got the wing foiler design shirt, hats, hoodies, mugs, got the Foilosopher. I love that one. Stoked on that one. The other designs with my logo and more to come. And so everybody needs shirts, everyone needs hats and a hoodie now and then. So please show your support, and that's a great way to get some cool clothing and Stoked design and support me and the site while you're at it. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you out there real soon. Big hug and long, fast rides.